Okay, so graphing method number one is using slope and y-intercept, y is equal to mx plus b. Graphing method number two, we just learned, is using a table of values. And now we're going to learn graphing method number three, which is using the x and y intercepts. So I've kind of pointed out what the x and y intercepts are, but I haven't really gone over it in much detail, and I'm going to do that now. This diagram shows you what an x and a y intercept is. So imagine that you have a line going through. Whenever that line passes through the x-axis, like over here, that is what we call the x-intercept. And anything that goes through the x-axis, what you have to remember, like if I were to label this point, I will call this point 3, 0. And in fact, any line that goes to the x-axis, the y value is always going to be 0. You have to remember that. So if it was going through here, it would be -1, 0. If it was going through here, it would be -4, 0. If it was going through here, it would be 1, 0. So the trend is for the x-intercept, it's always going to be a number. And then the second value, the y value, has to be a 0. Okay, so that's a little bit of a helpful hint for you when we do these questions. Now let's look at the y-intercept. The y-intercept is when the graph goes through the y-axis. So this point right here. If I were to label this point, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it would actually be 0, -6. And the trend for any line that goes to the y-axis is it's always going to be 0, something. So here it would be 0, -1. Here it would be 0, -3. Up here it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0, 6. So the basic like formula, I guess, is it's going to be 0 and then the number, whichever number it's going through on the y-axis. This information is really, really important because if I ask you to figure out what the y-intercept is, you are always going to let x equal to 0. So just, I don't think I included this diagram in your handouts, but like I said, I'm going to be posting this so you can print this out as well. But just remember for the y-intercept, you always let x equal to 0. It's kind of opposite. If you're looking for the y-intercept, you let x equal to 0. And the other rule is when you're trying to find the x-intercept, you always let y equal to 0. So again, opposite. If you're looking for the x, the y is going to be equal to 0. Okay, let's practice doing that. As long as you remember those rules, you will be perfectly good for these questions. So I have an equation here. It is 3x minus 4y is equal to 12. And I'm going to try to figure out the y-intercept and I'm going to try to figure out the x-intercept. So I'm basically trying to figure out where on the x-axis this line is going to be going through, and I'll make a point there. And then I'm going to figure out where on the y-axis this line is going through, and I'm going to make a point there. And that's really all the pieces of information I need to graph my line. Once I know which x it's going through and which y it's going through, I can just connect those two dots and I have graphed my line. Okay, so let's try. Hold on, I see. Excellent. All right, let's go ahead and try it. So I'm just going to unplug my computer for a quick second. There we go. The equation is 3x minus 4y is equal to 12. And in the first question, I have to, for the x-intercept, I am going to let y equal to 0. So I'll just write that down so we remember it. Okay, and then we're going to start with our equation, which is 3x minus 4y is equal to 12. And wherever I have a y, I am just going to be putting in a 0 there. So my next line is going to be 3x minus 4 times 0 is equal to 12. Four times 0 is just 0, right? So it's going to be 3x minus 0 is equal to 12. Now that 0 kind of just disappears. So we're going to be left with 3x is equal to 12. Divide both sides by 3. And so x is going to be equal to 4. So what I did was I took my equation I put in y is equal to 0 because we know that if I go back to this diagram here, for anything that is an x-intercept, why can't I move up? For anything that is a x-intercept, the y value has to be 0. That's the rule, right? X-intercept, let y equal to 0. So I use that rule over here. I put in a 0 wherever I have my y, and I got x is equal to 4. What exactly does this mean? This means our point is going to be at 4, 0. So if we were going to graph this, we would put a point at 4, 0 right over there. That is where our line is going through the x-axis. That is our x-intercept. Okay, so now we have the y-intercept, and for the y-intercept, we want to set x equal to 0. The rule is, again, I'm going to go up here. For the y-intercept, you're going to let x equal to 0. So I'm going to write that rule at the top so I don't forget. I'm going to write let x equal to 0. And I'm going to do my calculation the same way. So I'm going to start with my equation, which is 3x minus 4y is equal to 12. If you're wondering where I'm getting the equation from, it's the one given to us up here. Now, wherever I have an x, I'm going to be putting in a 0. So it's going to be 3 times 0 minus 4 times y is equal to 12. 3 times 0 is just 0. So it's going to be 0 minus 4y is equal to 12. I need to get rid of that negative 4 in front of and by the way, the 0 is just a 0. It doesn't exist. You're going to divide both sides by negative 4. Oh, I guess in the other question, I rewrote it. So let me do that so I'm consistent. So I just rewrote it as negative 4y is equal to 12. Divide both sides by negative 4. And so your question, you're simplifying is y is equal to negative 3. So that means our point, because we let x equal to 0 and we figured out that y is negative 3, what do you think our point is going to be? What coordinate am I going to put? You're partly right. So not 4, negative 3. In this question, we got y is equal to negative 3, but what's x equal to? It's just equal to a 0. Good. So it's going to be close, Shams, again. Just switch them around. It's going to be 0. Oh, whoops. It's going to be 0, negative 3. There you go. Yes, 0, negative 3. And why is that? Because your x is 0 and your y is equal to negative 3. For this one, your y was 0 and your x was equal to 4. So now when I plot that point at 0, negative 3, it's going to be down here. That is my y-intercept. That is where the line is going through the y-axis. So I didn't make a table of values. I didn't do anything like that. I just figured out 2 points, where it's going through the x-axis, where it's going through the y-axis, and that's enough for me to graph this line. I'm now going to get my ruler. I'm going to make a nice line going through, and then I'm going to label it with the original equation because we didn't rearrange it. 3x minus 4y is equal to 12. All right, so let's do the exact same thing for example number 2, which is kind of squished in there. Negative 5x plus 6y is equal to 30. So again, we're doing the exact same steps as we did before. Should I use pink or should I use blue? I think I'm going to go with blue. Yeah, let's do blue. All right, so the x-intercept, you're going to let y equal to 0. That's the rule. Memorize it if you need to. For x-intercept, you always let y equal to 0. When we do our y-intercept, then we're going to let x equal to 0. Okay, so as long as you have those known, then the rest of the question becomes really straightforward. Now, to do this question, I'm going to start with writing out the equation, which is negative 5x plus 6y is equal to 30. Wherever I have my y, I'm going to set that equal to 0. So it's going to be negative 5x plus 6 times 0 is equal to 30. 6 times 0 is just 0, so it's kind of going to disappear, and I'm going to have negative 5x is equal to 30. I divide both sides by negative 5. Negative 5 divided by negative 5 is just 1, so x is going to be equal to negative 6. And, oh, that 6 looks kind of weird, huh? Okay, that's good enough. And then what is my point going to be over here? So if I were to write a coordinate, what would I write? Zero comma 6, not quite. Sienna, thank you. Abarami, good job. You got it right. It's going to be negative 6 comma 0. So let's go ahead and plot that at negative 6 comma 0. That is going to be our x-intercept. Yay. Okay, so I'm going to figure out the y-intercept now. I'm going to let x equal to 0 and I'm going to solve. So again, my equation is negative 5x plus 6y is equal to 30. And now I'm going to let x equal to 0. So it's just going to be negative 5 times 0 plus 6y is equal to 30. Negative 5 times 0 is 0. So it kind of disappears. And all you're left with is 6y is equal to 30. To solve for y, we're going to divide both sides by 6. And y is going to be equal to 5. Can you guys tell me what my coordinate would be for this? For the y-intercept? Good job, Amarami. You got it. Your x is equal to 0 and your y is equal to 5. Here's a common error that I want to make sure you guys don't do. When you figure out your x and y intercepts, you have to really think about what you're figuring out. Just because you get x is equal to negative 6 and y is equal to 5, you can't write the coordinate as negative 6 comma 5. That doesn't tell you anything. That's just a point. And that's completely wrong. So I know a lot of people do that. They figure out x is equal to negative 6, y is equal to 5, and they put those together as their coordinate. That's not correct. You're trying to figure out where on the x-axis the line is going through. So you need a point for that. And where on the y-axis the line is going through, you need a point for that. So you need to make sure one of your points has a 0 for the x and one of them has a 0 for the y. All right, so this is 0 comma 5, which we're going to write over there. That's our y-intercept. And now we're going to take our ruler, we're going to connect the points, and we're going to draw arrows on both sides. All right, and then our equation, I'm just going to label it with whatever we had at the top. So it's going to be negative 5x plus 6y is equal to 30. Why is the y-intercept saying let x equal to 0? Because that's the rule. To figure out the y-intercept, you let x equal to 0. To figure out the x-intercept, you let y equal to 0. That's how you get 2 points that are on the x-axis and the y-axis. All right, so I thought 2 examples would be fine for that because really everything is exactly like this. There are textbook questions for this. So if you wanted, you could start off with the textbook questions or you could start off with the sheets that I've attached. So I'm going to go over everything so you guys know exactly what to do for homework. Your textbook questions are page 432, numbers 1 to 28, just the odd ones. So 1, 3, 5, 7, and then 29 and 33. And then also I have two activities. Actually, is it one? No, yeah. I like this activity. I think if you are someone who likes to color, you'll enjoy this. So for this activity, for every question, it tells you what to do. Find the x-intercept. So for this one, you would let y equal to 0 and solve. I'll do one of them with you guys. So to find the x-intercept, your y has to be equal to 0. So it would just be 5x plus 6 times 0 is equal to 15. 5x is equal to 15, x is equal to 3. And so you would put that over here. And then you would do that for the rest of them. As you find the answer to each question, shade the triangle with the corresponding answers in the geometric shape each time that it appears. So 3, 0 is what you would be shading. I would just shade in all of the 3s. And then in the end, you're going to get like a nice picture, but really the point of it is to get you to practice that. And then the other activity is this maze activity. Begin your work at the start box, find the x and y intercepts of each equation. And so each one will have only one correct answer. So for example, you start over here, get another piece of paper, figure out what the x-intercept and y-intercept is, and then you look at these arrows to see which one is the matching answer. So for example, this one, when y is equal to 0, x is going to equal to -3. So it's going to be this direction. That means you're going to shade this in and then go to this question next. The question sheet, okay, I'm going to stop the recording now.